Today, I'm joined by analytics expert. He is the founder of measurementmarketing.io. He is a keynote speaker. Mercer, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here, man. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I've heard you on a few podcasts, notably Social Media Marketing Examiner. You dropped a ton of knowledge bombs. And so I'm really glad to kind of get in, ask you some questions, and provide value to all the people out there building businesses.
Let's do it. I'm looking forward to it, especially in today's day and age when so many people are now finally going, hey, this is online. This is a real thing. We got to really focus on this.
Yeah, a lot of the changes that we're seeing in the world now have really been accelerated due to this global pandemic. So I think that a lot of people are trying to understand, how can I drive traffic to my website, to my blog, to my landing page? So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the strategies that we can use to do that. So let's take a look. Let's take a 3,000 foot overview here real quick, Mercer, and say, what are analytics and why is it important for someone to understand their numbers?
Absolutely. So it's a great question, because when you first start out, I think the tendency is like you get used to the tech and you kind of piece everything together, and then you maybe turn on things like Google Analytics to kind of know your numbers, quote unquote, right? So you know what's working and what's not, at least in the spirit of that. But very quickly, you end up getting overwhelmed by a ton of data that you're like, okay, this is just a bunch of stuff. I'm not sure what to do with it. So I'm just going to stop doing this and I'll start selling widgets. And you kind of go back into the marketing of stuff,
right?
Kind of blind in a way, right? Because you didn't take the time to know your numbers. But at a certain point, I promise everybody has this, you will come back to, okay, I have to learn this stuff. As a business owner, it's important to know what's working, what's not. And the way that we think about it at measurementmarketing.io, and part of the reason we call it measurement marketing, is we define that as a conversation. So if you and I were at a brick and mortar store and I was trying to buy some golf clubs or something from you, you would have to have a conversation with me, right? I'd come in, we'd talk about my swing, you'd measure, we'd try some stuff out, I'd purchase, there would be a conversation that's happening. Well, that hasn't actually gone away. That is still how people buy. It's just that a lot of those conversations are now happening, not between people, so to speak, but they're happening between a person and a website. Right. And so what we do at Measurement Marketing is to help businesses understand how to measure that conversation. So essentially what measuring that conversation is listening to their side of that conversation. So the user's coming on and they're looking at your homepage. Did they go through your homepage the way that you wanted them to? Did they opt in for the thing that you're trying to get them for like a lead magnet or something like that? Did they go to find out about your products and services or go into your blog like you expected them to? Did they have the conversation that you expected them to have? And that's what the measurement part is all about. And if you measure that and you listen for what they're saying, then you can change your marketing. And that's how you keep the conversation going. Right. And so that's the whole concept of measurement marketing, is listening to their side of conversation and keeping that conversation going.
And that's certainly the magic of the internet, is because you can't scale that one-on-one conversation at the golf pro shop, but you can absolutely scale the messaging 100%. From your website and your funnel and your landing page and so on and so forth. One of the things that you brought up, Mercer, that I think is really important and is scary for me, and I think a lot of people that are new to the analytics scene, is that information overload. Yeah. Right. As soon as you pull up the Facebook ad manager or the Google Analytic homepage, it's like tons of numbers, tons of initials.
What does this stuff mean?
What does it mean? And I, like you said, I think that scares a lot of people away. So assuming someone says, you know what, Mercer's right, I gotta start figuring out how these conversations are going. Where's a good place for someone to start in the Google Analytics? What are some key verbiage that they need to get clear on right away?
Yeah, it's a great question. So essentially, people are trying to figure out what's working and what's not. And if you dial that back just a little bit more, of what you're really asking, what the technical questions are that you're asking is, okay, where am I getting traffic from? So what is sending traffic to my site? And then what are the results of that traffic? So it's really those two things that you're trying to answer. So whenever you're kind of thinking, I just got to figure out what's working and what's not in my funnels or whatever, what you're really asking is, where's that traffic coming from? What's happening with that traffic? In other words, what are the results from that traffic? So in the spirit of that, when you focus on those questions, it becomes easier to answer, because what's working, what's not, is too general, right? It doesn't really have an easy answer, because it could be anything. But when you say, where's my traffic coming from? Well, now you're going into analytics and you're asking it a specific question. So there's a report, there's a Google Analytics report. It's my favorite report in there. It's called the Source Medium Report. When you're in analytics, you can literally just type it in the search box. It'll pull up Source Medium. And so what that report does is it does an incredible job. In one spot, you can see where your traffic is coming from. You can see how much of that traffic that you're getting from each of the different traffic sources. You can see what the engagement level is of that traffic, how engaged they were with your site, and you can actually see the results of that traffic. So you can see, well, how many from Facebook became a lead, or how many from my email actually bought. And you can see all that in one report. And that is the best report to use in analytics, because it really does about 80% of the heavy lifting. Most of the questions you're going to have will be answered in that report. And as a beginner, that's the one you got to focus on. Is don't worry about all the other stuff that's going on in analytics, because that's kind of its problem, is it can do so much, and it tries to, that it gives you too much to look at. And then you go like, holy cow, I don't even know how to stitch this thing together. And you end up going down rabbit holes. And then you're like, again, forget about this, will come back in a couple of years, right? But if you just focus on that source medium and really mastering that one report and understanding that, it will tell you the story that you're looking for. So you know what traffic's coming in, and you know what the results of the traffic are. So essentially you'll kind of know what's working and what's not.
Yeah. And I think that anyone is trying to build revenue online, that is the main question. Where are people coming from, and are they converting? And if not, where can I better use my time? And I think that this is important to point out too. Start with something basic. I love this 80% of the heavy lifting from this source medium. Get clear on that. And if you really want to take it to the next step, you can certainly find out a lot more about the tools that you offer on your website, measurementmarketing.io, whether it's, you do coaching, or you can actually do the management for business themselves. Because quite frankly, when you're building a business, you really want to focus on your core competency and let others kind of help with that heavy lifting. So taking a little bit of a step back, and I know this is kind of niched down a bit, Mercer, but what are some trends that you're seeing in the marketplace now? Where are you seeing good conversions coming from? Are we talking Google ads? Are we talking Facebook? Are we talking Instagram stories? Where are some places you're seeing good traffic come from?
I see good. I mean, to be completely fair, to answer that question, answer that question, I should say, in the best, most useful way, is they come from everywhere. Yeah. There isn't a secret of, everyone's on Google ads and now Google ads is working, because if you don't have a good product, if you don't have a good offer, changing your traffic source isn't going to fix anything. Right? It's just going to get more people to say no to you. What I am seeing is people, because they have more visibility, and this is why it's important to learn these tools, right? This is not an optional thing. And to your point earlier, we do have different trainings. We have like a do-it-yourself level. We have done with you and we have done for you. I am personally a fan of companies learning to do this on their own, whether they work with a vendor forever kind of thing, or somebody else that does it for them, but they have it as part of their DNA, a measurement culture. Because when you do that, you get better visibility into how your machinery is working. And you kind of think about it like glasses, right? If you have a prescription for glasses and you don't at all wear glasses in the beginning, everything's totally blurry and you're kind of stumbling around a little bit trying to figure out where everything is. So when you first start out with analytics, you use the source medium report and you get a better prescription. It's not perfect. It's not going to be the crystal clear picture of everything, but it gives you more of a perception than you had before. So you can kind of get a better idea of how things are working. Now, when you do that, you will go what we call the measurement journey. So you'll start off where you don't really know anything and you turn stuff on by installing things like analytics. And then you start to learn about how to, what's there in terms of that initial source medium report. Then you start tagging your traffic better and you start setting up analytics in the way for it to tell your story, as opposed to like more of a general story, but it's so you can customize analytics to give you better results. So you dial in that prescription and you dial in the prescription again, you dial it again, you keep getting better and better and better at that. But when you start doing that pretty quickly, so very quickly on, you'll start to realize like, okay, now that I know what's going on, I'm going to change what I'm doing with my traffic. And this goes back to your original question. So it's not the traffic source of Facebook. It's that they stop necessarily saying, well, we're going to get sales from Facebook from cold traffic, because no, you're not. That's not how it happens. Accidentally, some people will buy, sure, that first hear about you, but most people, it's going to be retargeting. It's going to be an audience, or Facebook is a cold offer, which means they're coming for awareness. And you start measuring, did we make people aware of the brand? Did we get people to engage with the brand? Did they actually retarget maybe with another campaign and get them to actually move forward with that engagement in terms of a purchase with that brand? And did they ultimately repurchase, or did they share it with others? You can measure for all of this. And so what happens is, instead of just saying, oh, well, Facebook or Google ads, you start saying, Facebook's job is to make people aware. Google ads job, let's say as an example, is to make people engage, because we're going to retarget the Facebook traffic from there. And then our email traffic is what's actually going to get them to buy, because that's where we nurture them and that's where we offer them the actual offer. And they're more likely at that at that stage of the customer journey to buy. And the beauty of this is that you can actually chart all this out and you can measure for that. So you can plan out, you can forecast ahead what your future is going to look like and say, here's how the company should operate. Here's how my marketing should operate. And you can measure it. And then you can see, did it work like it was supposed to? Which is like one of the most powerful shifts you can make as a marketer. Instead of just looking back at your data all the time, which is what people do by default. Yeah. They always look back and say, what happened? What happened? What happened? It's a wrong question to ask. You're never going to get anywhere doing that. But when you say, did it work like it was supposed to, like I planned it would, then it'll say, well, yeah, Facebook totally made people aware. Google ads didn't actually engage like you needed them to, but the emails worked. And you go, okay, let's look at the Google ads section. What's wrong? Is it the targeting was off? Is it the expectation wasn't set properly? Was our technical glitch, at that particular step? But at least you know what actions to take and they become apparent. And you're not guessing like, what do I do to fix stuff? It's, okay, this is the one thing that's not working as expected. Let's focus on that.
And to me, that's really important because you're looking forward, you're not looking backward, because I think that
100%.
The mentality of a lot of people would be, okay, my Google ads aren't getting a lot of engagement. It doesn't work. I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on these other things, but you might be skimping out on a major piece of the whole pie.
Yeah.
Right?
In fact, I remember, personal story, like when I was starting out this whole online thing, and I came from a marketing background. I came from a sales background for years. I used to sell radio and broadcast back in the day. Yep. So I understood advertising and marketing. And yet when I came into digital, for some reason, like your brain just flips off and you do stuff that you would never do in the real world. So digitally, I set up an offer. I had my opt-in form. I followed everybody's advice, right? Bought the programs that everybody else is buying and read the same blog posts. I put up my stuff and it didn't work or it didn't work as expected. And I was like, well, okay, like, I guess this thing doesn't work. Like that's how it was, right? You don't think like, oh, I should change the headline until I started learning about conversion rate optimization, and it was like, oh, wait, I should just ask in a different way. And I remember thinking to myself, mind blowing, that I should just ask in a different way. Right. And then when you start doing that, you start seeing those tests and you go, oh, actually, okay, now if I ask with this headline, or if I switch out the offer to say this instead of that, or emphasize this instead of that, or try it in this way, meaning you change your funnel. Maybe it's not a webinar funnel, but it's a VSL or whatever the thing is, right? A video sales letter. So you can adjust it and you can measure for it. And that's when I got really good at starting to predict and forecast out and say, okay, now that I know how this stuff works, here's how it should work next week. And to your point, what we call marketing forward, right? Where you're always looking forward in your marketing saying, okay, I need to go through and say, I'm going to send 100,000 hits from Facebook or 1,000 hits, right? Small budgets. You have 1,000 hits from Facebook, impressions of the ad. 100 of those people are going to come to my page. Of those 100 people, 30 are going to engage, 15 are going to become leads, 2 are going to buy within 7 days. And you can measure for all of that stuff, which is kind of what's brilliant about being able to digitally measure like we can now.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you certainly want to adjust your messaging at all points of that ladder, because I think one of the mistakes you can make in this industry is having this clickbait mentality, right? You've got a great headline, this great offer, but as soon as someone clicks through and they get to your website, they're like, this isn't what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it's something we call the expectation engine, but you have to match the expectation. Every step creates an expectation for the next step. And it's kind of where the engine, right? So the more that you're doing this, more times that you're doing this, the more likely they are to actually purchase in the end. So to your point, if you have an ad that's clickbaity and they come into it and it's set this expectation of like, oh, something really cool. And then it's like, not so cool.
Yeah.
They bail, right? Because you're not making expectation. Same thing on a store. If you've got a Shopify store and you're like, hey, t-shirts are on sale, and it lands on a lander that talks all about the jeans category of pants or whatever, it doesn't match expectations. So you're going to lose some people there. So it's 100% important to keep that expectation engine working.
Do you think it's a smart idea, Mercer, to have multiple landing pages kind of customized per the initial offer, that initial ad that's set up on, again, your Facebook, your Google? Do you think you should have a ton of different landing pages, or do you think one general landing page? What are your thoughts on setting up your website?
It's a great question, because it depends. I am a fan of keeping your system manageable and as simple as possible, because the more pieces you add to it, the more complex it gets, and then it becomes a nightmare to maintain, which means it doesn't get maintained, and then things get broken pretty quickly and you're not sure what's broken, and then you're doing stuff that you shouldn't really be messing with because there's fires popping out everywhere, right? So, and I've done both. I've had, in fact, things like this with the podcast, right? So right now people can go to measuremarketing.io/savant, right? SAVANT, and they will see our toolbox offer. Now, what that used to do back in the day is I would have created a whole separate page just for the toolbox. And I would put, hey, thanks for listening to Mark's podcast in the headline, right? And kind of did that. And it was cool because it was like, oh yeah, just listen to the podcast. Now I see the headline. Mm-hmm. But did I see a bump in conversion rates? The answer is no, I didn't, right? Because people were like, that wasn't what they were coming to see. They were coming to see the toolbox. They were already kind of warm traffic because they heard about it on the podcast. They were coming with the intention already of signing up. My job was just don't get in the way, right? So that headline didn't help with the conversions in that case. So what we ended up doing, and then to be honest, we had 45 different landing pages that were all the same thing, right? And so instead we're like, okay, we're going to combine everything. So everything goes to our main toolbox offer. And now I just track it with something called UTM tags, which anybody can Google. Just the letters U, T as in Tom, and then M as in Mary. But you can actually go in there and you can tag. And so you'll see when you go to measuremarketing.io/savant, you're going to see, if you look in the page, it'll say, oh, you're on the toolbox page. And then in the URL, it'll say that you came from this podcast, right? And so that's how I measure, did podcast traffic generate leads for us? And ultimately, does podcast traffic, purchase products from us? And that's how I know, and that's how we've learned that podcast is a good channel for us, right? So that's why we do podcasts like this, is for the outreach, because we know that it generates. It's not just, well, I'm just going to go out there and do outreach wherever I can. There's a strategy behind it, because the numbers, right? Our story that we saw in the numbers, the story told us like, hey, you do really well with podcasts and with speaking and being on stage. And that works really well to establish relationship and get people to take the next step with the company, to engage with the company. So that's why we do it.
So that's actually very, very interesting. So what you're saying, just to kind of break this down, is that you can have a single landing page, but different links that actually send people to that same landing page. So you're not having to go through all these different, this very, very complex tree or skeleton of a website. Yeah, it's
exactly right. So I can tell, did they come into the toolbox? Did they create their free toolbox membership? Did they do it because of this podcast? Was it the, social media marketing podcast? Was it Facebook traffic that was doing a retargeting campaign on? And I can answer those questions. Again, that's the conversation, right? So I can understand like where they came from and then what actions those particular traffic sources took. That's exactly right.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, to me, that makes a lot of sense. If you're doing like A/B testing on ads, and you can really, really get down and dirty without making your website overly complicated.
Absolutely correct. Yeah, you can say, did they come from the Facebook ad with the horses on it? Was the Facebook ad with the pictures of puppies, right? And you can really get granular with using UTMs. In fact, that toolbox membership that we talked about earlier, that free toolbox membership, there's tools in there that will train you on how to do that. So that's something free that we offer to people.
Yeah, I want to talk about that toolbox just a little bit to get a better understanding of, because I think this gives us a better understanding of, how to get from A to Z and kind of move through there. What would someone expect? So, I go to the measurementmarketing.io/savant. I land on the toolbox. What kind of tools are we going to see in that toolbox?
So a lot of tools that we've developed for our members that are back there. The one in particular that I would focus on, there's actually maybe two I would take a look at. One is the traffic tracking toolkit. So when you get in there, you'll see there's a tool that's designed to help you figure out what UTMs are. There's a whole video that trains you on how to actually use them and what they are and it's made for beginners. So if you've never even heard of UTMs before, totally cool. Like that's where we're starting. So that's good. So you get in there, you learn that. There's a nice ebook that it comes with that kind of walks you through strategy and how to think about this different stuff. So all of that's in there. Then, and that I would go through first. So tag your traffic first. And that's a popular question we get is like, what should I do first when I'm at analytics? Yeah. Learn about tagging your traffic. It will talk about the source media report. You'll see me go through the source media report in those training videos. And again, that's totally free. So everybody can start doing that. The second thing, after you get your traffic kind of tagged and set up and you got a handle on what the different traffic sources are and how analytics works with traffic, is the result side. And that's where you start setting something called goals in Google Analytics. It's actually a feature of analytics. You can set a goal and say, when somebody becomes a lead, that's a goal. When somebody does a purchase, that's a goal. When somebody sees the cart page, that might be a goal. So we have something called ACE goals that we talk about. And again, there's a whole ebook series on that. So you can go back there and learn about that. And ACE goal stands for three things. It's awareness, completion, and then engagement. So you have to set when people are aware of the thing you want them to be aware of. You set a goal when they've completed the process that you want them to complete, and you set a goal when they've engaged along the way. So as an example of that, we've got a program called Win Monthly Pass, which is like a recurring membership with a bunch of courses in it. So as soon as somebody goes to the Win Monthly Pass page, I trigger a goal that's an awareness goal. So I know that they are now aware of Win Monthly Pass. Doesn't mean they bought it, just means they're aware of it. Then I have another goal when they see the cart. right? So that's like an intention to buy. So that's another goal. That's my engagement goal. And then of course I have the final thank you page when they purchase. That would be like a completion goal. And that's what ACE is. It's awareness of the page, it's completion of the actual product sale in this case, and it's engaging in the middle, right? And so what I'll do is I'll set, again, measuremarket.io/Savant. People can see this working. They go to the UTM, they'll see the UTMs in the URL. When they sign up for in my system, in my analytics, it'll say, cool, a lead has been achieved. And that podcast traffic is how it'll be recognized by my system. It'll say podcast, that it'll be associated to them becoming a lead. So I have a goal for that. Well, then they get presented an offer, right? It's probably going to be Win Monthly Pass. That's one of our flagship products. Mm-hmm. So then when they see that Win Monthly Pass offer, that triggers an awareness goal. Then if they click on the cart page, it'll trigger the engagement goal. And ultimately, if they purchase, it'll trigger that completion goal. So that's how I can tell, what is podcast traffic doing for me as a company, as a brand? How is it helping me? Is it really good at making people aware of things, which is awesome? Because people, we have to think as brand marketers to some extent too, not just direct response. So making people aware of the brand is great, but does it get them to engage with the brand as well? Like, they need to see it and walk away, or do they go, yeah, actually, I'm going to take a look around, right, and see stuff. And so we can measure for engagement. And again, very few people initially are going to buy a product because they just heard about us on this podcast. I shouldn't expect them to spend a bunch of money with us 30 seconds later. But as they're in the email series and they nurture through, I can actually measure and see, okay, which email caused the sale. And it's because I'm measuring for that completion goal. And so that's how I tell the story. I can hear that story, that conversation of, oh, people that come through podcast will purchase through email, or has a better chance of purchasing through email, or at least a certain percentage of them will within a certain period of time. And that's how I can measure for all that. And then again, that's a prediction. Like, that's not me going to my numbers saying, what just happened with podcast traffic? That's me pulling the numbers and saying, did podcast traffic work like it was supposed to? Because I have numbers in my head, and we plan for this to say, we forecast it, say podcast traffic should generate X amount over the next 30 days. Of those people, here's what will happen. Here's how many people will be aware of this program and this program. Here's how many people will engage with this program and this program. Here's how many people will ultimately complete this program and this program. And then tying it into podcast traffic through other traffic sources like emails helping out. And so we can see all of that. And that's the beauty of analytics. It's free. Like, this whole platform is free. And ultimately, to get really fancy with it, you'll need other tools like Tag Manager and Data Studio to enhance things. But when you're just starting out, analytics is plenty. Get started with that. And again, don't think about it like, oh, I don't have the perfect answers. I don't have my setup like measuremarketing.io does, so I can't possibly get anything useful. That's like saying, I'm going to wait for the perfect prescription, but instead of an okay prescription, I'm just going to use no glasses at all. No, of course not. You would use the okay prescription. At least it's better. Right. And the way we teach it, we call it good enough to get going. Like, you do get good enough to get going, then you come back and make it better later. Like, don't give yourself that permission to just get moving and get a little bit of momentum and get your wins. And when you start getting those wins, then you start going like, oh, I want a little bit more of this. And then you start going, well, how do I do this a little bit better? And then maybe you do pull in Tag Manager, or for collecting a little bit, more interesting information. Or maybe you bring in Data Studio to start building dashboards, at that point. But it's a natural evolution of the journey that you're on. It's not all day one. Because if you try to do that all on day one, you're going to overload yourself, and you'll end up just being like, forget this. I'm just going to start selling widgets somewhere. And again, you stay blind. Like, that's the idea of like, I'm not going to wear glasses. Like, of course, wear something that's better and good enough to get going.
Yeah. And frankly, I think that's probably one of the top reasons that people don't get into their analytics and don't get into their numbers, because they get that information overload. And probably secondly, is they say, I don't have time. I'm too busy with my urgent tasks versus my important tasks. Because like you just kind of said here, and your little summary here is that that podcasts convert, so they are worthy of your time. If you knew that podcasts didn't convert, you can save a half hour, an hour, and actually join that podcast. So at the end of the day, it allows you to better utilize your time, which frankly is the biggest asset that we have when trying to build a business here.
100%. That's exactly right. Because you better know where to put your resources. That's exactly right. I mean, this isn't an optional thing. It's at best, you can just delay it. So if you're thinking out there, but I don't need to know my numbers right now. Like, okay, but you will eventually need to know your numbers. So you're going to come back to this again and again and again until you finally learn it, or have somebody else that does, right? Because you could just hire somebody on your team to do that if you're not quote unquote a numbers person. But again, the way we teach it, we kind of teach it in the way that you're not a numbers person. Like you don't need to be a data analyst or a scientist. You don't need to use a spreadsheet. Like you could just, we teach this in a very different way. We're like, hey, set up analytics so it tells you a story. Let's make that story easier to read. And we teach that because I think a big thing that people miss that they don't realize, this is the biggest misconception about analytics, is they think that setting it up is turning it on. Right. So if you go to Shopify and it says, oh, well, put in your, Google Analytics account ID, and you do that, and it's like, great. Then stuff starts showing up in analytics. You think it's set up, it's done. It's not. It's just turned on. It's just activated. Right. So you have to do setup, and there's things called views, and there's filters, and there's all this different stuff, which sounds complicated, but really isn't once you know why it's there and how to use them. But then when you do that, you basically change the information that's coming through. And as it comes through, it gets changed and adjusted a little bit so that it becomes easier to read. And so it's kind of like the equivalent of if I gave you a storybook and I said, read me this story, but first I took all the pages out, ripped them all out, threw them in the air, and then they all landed on the ground. I said, cool, read me the story. Could you read me the story? The answer is yes. It would take you a while, right? You'd have to piece together different pages and figure out and turn things around and try to figure out, but eventually you'd be able to tell me the story. But if I just give you the story in a book and I don't rip out the pages, I said, read me the story, it's a lot easier to read. And that's the exact equivalent with Google Analytics. In the beginning, Google Analytics is like a bunch of pages ripped out, all kind of scattered. You can get to what you need, but it's going to take you a while, and it's going to take a lot of effort to get there.
So this is really, I want to get a little bit more practical. You said something here, Mercer, that I think is really, really important in that, okay, you've set up your Shopify store, your website with Google Analytics. You're not done, right? You also mentioned that source medium is one of the best places to start in Google Analytics to figure out what your traffic is, where it's coming from, what it's doing. What's the next, we're running out of time here, but what's the next that frankly, we could go on for hours about this. It's fascinating. But what's the best next step for someone once they've set up their analytics, or not set up, but link their analytics to their Shopify or their website? What's the best next step for them?
Once you turn analytics on, once you activate your analytics account, which is how you should think about that, right? It's turned on, it's activated, it's now collecting stuff, but it's not set up. Right. What you should do is go into the source medium report first. Because, and the reason I say that, now again, if you have a course, and I'll say this two different ways. If you're going to tackle this on your own, I'd say go to the source medium report. That's it. Don't look at any other report because they won't make sense. You're going to see a bunch of scattered stuff and it gets confusing really quickly. Just look at the source medium report and learn to use that report. If you go to the measuremarketing.io/Savant, you'll become a Toolbox member. Again, that's free. There's tools that will show you how to do that for free. So you can get started with that. Now, if you want to actually start learning this stuff, that's where you go into a course or, whether it's from us or YouTube, I don't care. But know that you have to set it up. So you have to create something called a view of the information. And then there's three different types of views that you create. You create a backup view, you create a testing view, and you create a production view, right? And the production view is so you can make decisions for your business. The testing view has all the company's hits, all the internal traffic that you're doing when you're testing your own stuff, or your vendors, your developers in there playing with stuff. You don't want all that stuff counting in your analytics numbers, but a lot of companies, that's what happens. So, but you can take that stuff out. Like there's ways to do that. And it's a little, again, a little more than we've got time for here, but that would be what you would want to do is set up your views and set up your filters so that data comes through. Ultimately, but if you're just starting out, I'd say you just focus on the source medium and you think about that eyeglasses thing where it's like, okay, I'm going to come into the source medium and I'm not using UTMs at all right now, let's say, because I don't even know they're a thing, or I just heard about them. And this guy Mercer talking about these UTMs. So I start using my source medium and you will see that some things show up, like organic traffic shows up. And then you've got referral types of traffic from other sites that are sending you traffic will show up. And then this stuff called direct none will show up, where that's basically analytics telling you, I don't know, they just showed up, right? That's what that is. And that's what it does on its own. But then you'll go like, well, I know Mercer said I can tag email traffic. I can tag podcast traffic. I can tag affiliate traffic. I can tag webinar traffic. I can tag speaking traffic, my paid Facebook traffic. Every type of traffic source you can practically tag in some way in Google Analytics, but it requires those UTMs. It requires a little bit of customization. It's not hard to do, but again, that in that training, we'll talk about how to do that, but that would be your next step. So once you get source medium and you kind of understand traffic and results and sort of what that looks like, which again, the free training will help you with, then level it up with get better at tagging your traffic, get better at setting goals. And that's tuning your prescription a little bit more. So you can see a little more clearly what's working and what's not. And then again, that's a win, which is why I'm suggesting kind of going that route versus like setting up views and filters initially. Now, again, if you're committed, you're like, I'm going to do this. Cool. Buy courses, go through views and filters, because that'll be the thing you want to do. But it's a little more heavier lifting. If you're just like, I'm going to put a toe in the water. I got a Shopify store. I got some traffic. I want to see what's working in analytics and what's not. then do the source medium, stay just in that report for now, learn it, and then get better at tagging your traffic and get better at setting up your goals. And then you'll see more wins. And that, when you start seeing that and you go, oh, now I start getting, you get those little aha moments of what's happening and you go, okay, so should this happen next week? And you check and you're like, oh, okay, it's happening exactly like it happened last week. And you're like, okay, great. Now you've got that excited sort of energy that now you can go into Google Analytics and deep dive it and really set it up properly. Because it's always that process of tuning the prescription, and never, ever, ever feel bad when you're like, my setup's not like somebody else's setup. Or I read this blog post of this YouTube video and they said to do this crazy stuff. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. Like, cool, give yourself permission. Eventually, maybe one day you will, who cares? Right now, let's get good enough to get going. Then you come back and make it better later. And that's really it.
Well, I love that. Mercer, you've just dropped a ton of information. And of course, guys, if you're not sold yet, you need to at least get your analytics set up. And Mr. Mercer here just gave you a breakdown on how to do that. And you, of course, go to measurementmarketing.io/savant to get that free toolbox to take it to the next level. Mercer, before I let you go here, I got a couple quick rapid fire questions for you, if that is all right. Mercer, what is one must-have business item that costs less than $25?
A business item that costs less than $25. You know, I use a calculator like more often than like there's calculators online and there's calculators in your computers. And I, more than anything, I'll tell you, I got these printed years ago. I little measurementmarketing.io calculators because I thought, oh, it's a cute little ruler, get it, measurement. But man, I use this thing more often than I use any other tool. And we're always in measurement. I've got dashboards that do calculations automatically. I've got spreadsheets that do stuff automatically, but man, I use that all the time. And I'll give you one other one as a bonus, is a whiteboard. Because having a whiteboard on the wall where you can just go, hang on a second, and capture that idea, right? It's like whiteboard or Post-it notes or something that you have a way to capture an idea is like pennies, right? To get a Post-it note in the case, it's pennies. But if you just capture one idea a year that from a Post-it note that costs you a few pennies that you actually take some action on, that talk about ROI, that 100%.
Love it. Those are great. Those are great. Mercer, what is one subscription that you could not do without, that you got to have this subscription? What is it?
One subscription that I could not do without. For us, it would be Infusionsoft. So if in terms of like a CRM subscription, because it does everything we need it to do. It's really good at segmenting. It grows with us as a company. So as we want to do more complicated stuff, you can kind of get a little more under the hood. So that's, I'd say, for the subscriptions that we want to keep right now, that's it. It's kind of an one-stop shop for sure.
Love it. Love it. And then final question for you here, Mercer. If you had a billboard that was going to reach millions and millions of people, what would you put on that billboard?
Oh, that's a good one. So what would I put if I was going to do a billboard? So this is like the radio part of me, because I used to sell against outdoor advertising, right? So I'm always like, well, I wouldn't use billboard. But there in the parlance of billboards, like the most powerful billboard, it would say, assuming you're brick and mortar, it would say like next exit. Because those are the things you can actually take action on, right? It's like you see the billboard, you go, this store, this restaurant, next exit, you're like, cool, now I can make a decision. But I would say, because this has to be for my company.
Well, it could just be a message that you want to get out to the world, right? This is the kind of an exercise in what message would I want to just spread to millions and millions of people, right?
Start now.
Start now.
I would just do 2 words, start now, make it nice and easy. And that way, anybody thinking about everything, because somebody somewhere driving, going to work is like, man, one day I'm going to start that company. I can't believe I'm doing it. And then you see this billboard that just goes, start now. And you're like, yeah. And somebody else is thinking about, man, I hope I was a sign that I got to stop eating cheesecake for dinner every night. And then it just says start now. And you're like, yeah, okay. Like, that's what I would do. I would do start now. Because I think there's a lot of people that make excuses for that. It's like, hey, just get started. Momentum, right, is rewarded. The life will reward your momentum and you'll get better and better and better.
100%. Those small daily victories add up. Mercer, thank you so much for your time. Great chat.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you having me. Take care.